thing that we're going to do is going to be a rectangular prism, which you could do as a cube as well, but I thought a rectangular prism would be easier. And I don't want to get too hung up on measurements, so I did, this is 2 inches across in this direction and 4 inches across in this direction. But I have this great little template. Everyone should have one of these. And you guys are going to use these to measure. I'm going to show you how to do it first, okay? And then we will go from there. Okay, so we're going to start with this rectangle, and we're going to actually use the edge of the page to do this. And when we make a rectangular prism, you can have it, we're going to trace it carefully, you can have it at 5 or 6 sides. And I'll show you what I mean by that. Okay, so I'm tracing really carefully, and I've got one, and then I'm going to put this right up against the edge of the other one, and just continue to trace it. And just the idea behind this, using this little template as opposed to a ruler, which you could absolutely use, is that it goes a little easier for you, but you still have to be careful in your placement. Okay, and be precise. So I'm going to I'm stacking these up essentially like this. And I'm going to go 4 in this direction. Okay. And if you feel confident, you can certainly follow along with me at this point. Don't cut anything yet. Okay. So now we have essentially what would be the sides or an extrusion. And then we need to have the parts that come out in this direction to cap our rectangular prism, right? So with your ruler, and I like the transparent ruler, I just think it's a little easier to follow because it lays nice and flat up against the page. I'm going to use that. I'm going to extend my line here. And then I'm going to extend my line here. Just a little ways. I'll explain how far to do it. So since we are going up this same distance, a way to decide how far to do it would be how long this distance is. And this is 2 inches, right? So we have another easy measurement. We can just take our template, lay it right along here. Make sure it's precise along the edge. And then draw a line over here. And that's how far you want it. So you do the same thing on both sides. And that's what we need. Okay? Because we know we only want to go as far as this next unit, which is 2 inches. And that's also 2 inches. So that they will close up on the same corner when we fold it. Okay? From here, we're going to use our scissors and carefully cut it out. I'm going to show you guys how to do the folding. Don't fold yet. And I haven't given you the tool to do this yet, so I'll give it to you in just a second because I want to explain how to use it. But we're going to score the lines that are on the inside of this, okay? So we're going to be using a tool. It's called the slice because it actually is very sharp. It's a teeny tiny blade. You can see the little blade right there. I'm not going to put my finger on it because it would cut me. But it's a ceramic blade, so it is sharp. The only thing that I find awkward about this is that the way that it's kind of bulky out here, it makes it a little hard to run up against a ruler. Okay, but I'm going to explain that when we get going. So we're going to score these and then fold them because we have tougher material. We have, cardstock, not just regular paper. If this was a thin piece of paper, we could just fold it and it would be fine, and that works great. But if we want kind of a tougher material, it's better to score it. So you're going to take the metal ruler on this one. And I'm wondering, too, if we could use this. It might help. So what we're going to do is take the blade and put it kind of right on the line that you want. And then take your ruler upside down, and it should be really good. And then you want to follow along the ruler, and we're just scraping it. You don't want to cut through because we're just scoring it to fold. So I'm going to do that one, and then I'll show you. Once you do that, the fold on it is really nice. All right, so we're going to do that on all of these. And then I have one that has a tab, and I'll explain that in a minute. So I'll give you guys a minute to do that. Okay, last step on this, guys, is once you're folded, you can bring it in, you can tape it together. You can put a piece of tape on the inside if you want and tape it there. The other thing I want to mention is the idea of tabs. If we're doing this for a final project, tabs are really helpful. And I didn't do it on this whole thing. You can do it on the whole form. Like I could have a tab here and all the way around. But I just did one on the end. And the tabs are nice because it gives you a place to really substantially tape that piece and make sure that it's kind of down. So that's an option that I want you guys to see. So go ahead and tape these. Did I get out the tape bin? Grab the tape bin if you need it and tape them up so that you have a nice form. You guys, on these I'm taping on the inside, so I'm going to tape like this. I'm going to bring this over. And then I'm going to secure the tape on the inside so that I don't see it on the outside. So this is just a few examples. This is the one with the tab that I have not brought together. This is one that I still haven't finished the top. So this is going to be a little bit challenging. This is why a tab works really nicely. But if you did have to, like let's say you got to this point and you really had to tape this nicely, I would say bring a piece all the way across, trim it with scissors, and then bring it down, and close it up just so it looks clean. This is an example of a rectangular prism that it has 5 sides as opposed to 6, and 5 might be handy if you want to get in on the back side. Like I know some of you guys have remote control type devices, so though I think this is appealing because it's a closed form, having an open form might be helpful if you need to get to the back or cut or do anything to it. Okay? The next form we're going to do is I call it a curved wall. Okay? So you're going to take just a scrap from that you have left over. Just kind of a rectangle type form like that. And it doesn't matter if it has something on it or it's fine. I'm just going to make it a little slimmer. Okay? I'm going to save these other pieces because I may use those. Now, again, everybody should have their glove on when they have their knife out. Not your scissors necessarily, but if you are using either this one or the long-handled one, especially with this next thing that we're going to be doing, you want to make sure that you have your glove out. Now, and on your hand. We are going to do a series of scoring right along the edge. Again, we're going to try to ride the edge of, I can do that, yeah. With this one, I can just lay it down flat. Ride the edge, and I'm just going to scooch it over. And I'd like you guys to play with this and try to make some of them really even. You do not have to draw them out ahead of time. Just try to make them even. This is just a sampling. And we're scoring, not cutting. And Keegan, with yours, you got the same that I do. I think it's easier to just lay this nice and flat like this, so that the whole surface here is flat against the table. It works a little better. I think that's the way this was intended. And then once you get some that are even, I'm going to have you do some that are uneven. So we'll have, you can either get larger or smaller, closer together, or farther apart. I'm going to go closer together. And make sure you score it like, so that it's, you know, let's pretend it's halfway through the paper. You know, it's like you're trying to make sure there's a good impression, but it's not going to cut it through. All right, so once you guys have scored this, what I want you to do is really get those scored pieces to curve for you. And see how, when you have them closer together, farther apart, how they change. Like these are kind of evenly spaced, and when they get really fine, the curve can become very tight, right? And when it's a little bit more spaced out, like this, then it's a little more faceted and the curve is different. Now I have an example right here that's very similar. You can see that I have it tight right here and more open here. But then you guys, give me your eyes just for a sec. You can also do something that is on an angle. You don't have to have it parallel to one edge. We're just doing that as a sample. But if you wanted to angle something and give yourself, this would be, actually, for anybody who's doing clothing, give me your eyes. That would be a wonderful collar, wouldn't it? So that's a great way to kind of get an organic form. And if I did something like this and I decided to like bring a line right here, it would look very Puritan collar, or whatever it is that you're looking for. Or if you turn it upside down, it becomes a vampire collar, you know. So for those who are doing more rounded shapes, this is going to be a great way to build up your form. Or if you have the edge of a hat, a couple people who have hats, that something like this might work really well. Okay. The next one I'm going to do is also a little bit organic, and I'm going to draw this so you guys can see it, but you don't necessarily have to draw it. Okay. If we were to do some sort of arc like this and score that arc, I'll show you what happens when you do that. So once I score that, suddenly I have a very organic shape. That's your hat, right? That's your hat. You can see how this could become very dynamic very quick. And that was so simple, right? Boom. Now, okay, let's get fancy. Shall we get fancy? Since I've already curved this, I can kind of see it on the back side, right? So I don't have to draw a line. But on the back side, if I were to do something similar but slightly different, and again, you want to fold so that the cut is on the outside. So now suddenly I have again a continued to be dynamic form. Can be kind of moon shape, and I've started with just a rectangle, but who says I have to start with a rectangle? What if I started with a circular form and did something like this? So this type of technique requires a little bit of experimentation. So just take again one of your scraps from that initial one and experiment with this technique. All right. The next thing we're going to do is a polygonal extrusion. It sounds like so lofty, doesn't it? It's really not. So you're going to take one of the long strips that I have, okay? And we're just going to guess at the spacing. You're going to go across the long way, perpendicular to the long way, right? Like this. And you're going to just score once, and then pick a different size. So I'm going to go small, like a distance that's small. So this was kind of medium. I'll go small here. And then I'm going to just do one that's like way over here. So I'll make a big space right here. Again, trying to keep it parallel to the edge. Okay. And then I am going to put a piece of tape on the inside, right here, so that when I close it up, I can tape it together. So I'm just going to fold these like so, and then I'm going to bring this over to the edge here. And then I'm just going to re-emphasize, you know, the folds. And then you guys can see that this is just it's a polygon. It's not a parallelogram, though you could come up with a parallelogram. It's, you know, not a rectangle. It's any form that you'd want. So if you had, let's say, if you had some sort of platform that you wanted to create, or a base to a form, or I'm just trying to think of, you know, if we had something that was attaching to the body, this might be a great curved section to put along the backside, and then this becomes, you know, part of the design. So there's lots of ways you could deal with this. Like, let's say I wanted to curve this. I might untape this, or not tape it yet. I taped it a little early. And like put those quick close score lines, and then that could become curved, and then this could go over. So there's a lot of ways of dealing with it. The reason it's called an extrusion is because it's essentially kind of like, almost like, remember Play-Doh? When you extrude a form, imagine this was like your Play-Doh shape, you know, and it extruded out. So forms like this that are dynamic in one direction, but consistent in another direction, can be called, you know, an extrusion type form. Does that make sense?